Hello everyone watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify. It's another episode of NRG Insights. For those who don't know, NRG Insights is a podcast based around the mortgage industry, whether that be specialist lending or on the broker side or any ancillary products in between, where we get people on of influence who can hopefully add some valuable insights into the market. So today I've got Chris Schutrups who's the MD of the Mortgage Hut. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Been a long time coming, isn't it?
I know, you keep flirting with it and then, I don't know.
So tell me about your kind of financial services journey up to the point where you are now as MD of Mortgage Hut.
Yeah, fine. So I started, dropped out of college, 16, because I was a little bit too social. Got a job, which I know you won't believe, Marcus.
No, I don't believe that.
And got a job at HSBC. They were just the first people to offer me a job. Went into the call centre there, did like the 4 weeks training, and then by coincidence, it turned out I was quite good at it. So I then went on to be a stockbroker, a small cap stockbroker in the city on Church Street. I did that for 2 years just before the credit crunch. I came back, worked for NatWest Royal Bank of Scotland Group as a customer advisor, then into management. And then my journey, I had a very brief stint for Friends Provident, who the older people will remember. They are everyone becomes Aviva, I think.
Yeah.
So they went Friends and then into Aviva. But I was that was a pretty chill job. I did it for 3 months, just like underwrite or helping underwrite Tesco life insurance policies. Very boring, honestly. Took like 2 calls a day, something like that. So very chill. And then I got offered a job by a company that I'd never heard of called Connells. And they were like, look, we're recruiting mortgage advisors who don't need any experience. And I thought, well, that sounds all right. And at this point, I'm about 21, so still quite young, don't own a house, in rented. And I did that for a year, met a chap who was a great branch manager. He said, why don't I start my estate agency? You can start the mortgage brokerage. And I thought, I was topping the region for Connells already. I was thinking, oh, bloody hell, I'm going to be driving a Bentley with gold-plated teeth before I know it. I'm going to be living.
The old magic of the financial services myth of
yeah, I know, exactly. And I started the business, the estate agent took an employed job, and no clients, no lead sources, no money. And it was an interesting journey, and that was about 14 years ago when the Mortgage Hut was started.
Nice. So talk to me about the kind of the journey of the Mortgage Hut then, where you were then and to where you are now. Yeah,
well, it's always interesting. I always think if I could do the first 5 years again, I could probably do it in a year because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting journey, and so we started just by me like with a briefcase, because back then we were still wearing suits, and now I'm sort of chilled in my Converse all the time. I was walking up and down like maybe the slightly lower end of Southampton's high streets. With my briefcase, just knocking on estate agents' doors saying, look, can I do your mortgage? Will you let me do this? And I started by doing some estate agency business, and then I rolled on to sort of creating a website, and back then SEO was sort of put all the names and everything into the bottom of your footer and you might rank on Google.
Yeah.
And then the journey was, we've been on a journey where we started with a couple of self-employed advisors. We still have our first ever self-employed advisor, a chap called Bob White, who joined me 6 months in. A lot of our advisors have been with us a long time.
Yeah.
We switched across, and we've been for a couple of journeys as well. We've done network DA, which is probably a good thing to talk about that journey. But we started with HR partnership. Everyone's been great, by the way. It's not, I haven't really got anything, but just horses for courses.
Yeah.
And it's as you grow and as your business changes, because the business changes, you evolve, and I guess you need to evolve there. So we started with HRP, went on to Mortgage Advice Bureau, and then a year ago this month we went directly authorised.
How was that actually? We'll go through that I will jump in intermittently because that's what I do. But the DA journey, I mean, people will be interested in that, right? Because there are a lot of people I speak to at the moment are potentially looking at moving into DA space. Maybe the networks just can't offer what they need, especially with some of the more complex stuff that happens at the moment. How was that? How was the journey, and how has it been for you? And what's the difference for the business?
Well, I guess to start with, so if we think about like MAB, who we're with, is what an advisor and a business owner needs really.
Mm-hmm.
If you want someone to give you an off-the-shelf business, systems, processes, to a certain extent, if you want to use their brand, their marketing, and they take a proportion for that, a little bit like a franchise. do, for example, then that's a great model. But the challenge with all networks, not MA, but like all of them, every single network has as a challenge, and they'll do it in their own way, is that if you have a network of, say, 400 firms, for example, they all essentially have to work in pretty much the same way, same process, the same systems, to ensure good customer outcomes from the FCA's point of view, ensuring that, supervision's correct. And that creates a challenge as a business as you grow and you maybe generate leads in a more trailblazing way, not in the traditional estate agency model or,
I was going to say it works really well for the original model of estate agency leads.
Exactly.
And then you just bang them out.
But and also technology, if you want to implement your own technology and sort of try and work your way forward there, it's pretty difficult. So, the journey itself, MAB made it very, Peter and Gareth and the team were very good at, when it came to time for us to leave, made it a chap called John Brooks, who's at MAB, who sits behind the scenes, who's an exceptionally intelligent gentleman who does all, a lot of the hard work, I'd say. Really good guy. It's super simple, helped us on that journey. The journey.
How was the journey with taking away from the network? How is the journey with the FCA? How's the DA process going?
They have a, Nicola, who's our principal, from what I understand, it's a journey where the regulator, rightly so, wants to make sure that get good customer outcomes and they know everything. And so there's lots of questions asked. It's a bit of a process. So they'll normally ask a good question. You'll go back. It'll take 2 weeks to assess. So that's where it takes the time. And our journey was somewhere around about 12 months. Some are quicker, some are 6. We were relatively.
Yeah, I think this process is quite quick at the moment. I think you kind of hit that period of that. There are a lot of people going through the same process.
Yeah, when you're leaving a network, the number one thing is, are they going to freeze the pipeline? Are they not going to freeze the pipeline? Having conversations. What you've got to remember, it's the same with your business, Marcus. Business is about relationships. It's not about contracts. It's not about, ultimately, if you have to rely on a contract, something's probably gone wrong. It's the truth, if you're starting to over that. And so, it's about first understanding your position and where you're going to be. If a network's going to freeze your pipeline, how are you going to cash flow that for the 12, 24, however many months they're going to do it? They're going to drip it down, whatever they may do.
I've heard some horror stories with that as well, by the way. Not looking at MAB, but just some horror stories on how much people have had held back, which is crippling for a small business, right? We're all in the cash flow situation, same as anyone else.
Yeah, I think you have to be reasonable though as well. And remember, a business like ours had a 7-figure liability on unearned commission. And so the network carries that liability. So I think it's about understanding, first of all, the position where you sit, what you actually are entitled to, where you'll be, and having great conversations. And then, for us, for example, we looked at the journey for a very long time. And the benefit for us is we can create our own processes, we can create our own systems, we can drive forward our customer experience to have better customer outcomes. We take more of the margin, because, with any business, if you're working under a franchise, a partnership, a network, they're taking a proportion of income, and a lot of the time that can be fairly significant. And that's the price you pay for them.
Especially on the bigger businesses, right? As you grow, it's a big lump.
But we essentially managed to double our profit as a business, and we're not a tiny business. By being directly authorised and creating efficiencies and creating better commercial deals with our partners. Because actually, if you're going to cut people in and there's not overriding everywhere, you can just say what's the meat on the bone, what works for you as a business, what works for us as a business, and then just what we've really enjoyed doing as a business is because we've then been able to partner. Because what you find is that networks, they normally have like a lender relationship person or an insurer relationship person, but when you have 200, 300, 400 firms, that gets really diluted. What we have the ability to do, especially on the insurer side, is work with the insurers to upskill our staff in a very big way, and that's meant that our average case size has gone up. Our penetration of protection has gone from 25% to 50%. Sorry, our split of income, I'd say, gone from 25% to 50%.
And you think that's an education piece with the insurers? Do you think that's a big element to it?
Education piece with the insurers, being able to create your own processes that works for you. So, for example, in our business, we ensure that we have conversations with customers about what they may or may not want to do protection-wise at the point when we sign the customer up. Not offer, not at exchange, because
Oh mate, I have some great people on here about life insurance, and the amount of penetration, the differences from when you mentioned it from the start is massive, because it's a big part of the business, right? It seems nuts that we live to the end.
Yeah, you've got the enthusiasm of the customer. If it has to go for a GPR, and also the other thing is there's great technology that we couldn't use under MAB that we do now, like Underwrite Me. I don't know if you've heard that, Marcus.
Yeah. Kate Dennehy, I know.
Yeah, where our advisors didn't necessarily have the experience of 20 providers, and it is hard. Being an advisor is a hard job.
Yeah.
And
You can't know every product, can you?
No, well, they already know 110 different lenders, 15,000 products, or they try to. And again, there's great products like Knowledge Bank and Mortgage Broker Tools and all those things that our advisors have. CI Expert for protection, but Underwrite Me has allowed us to go, okay, well, this is if they're relatively similar, is it going to go straight through? Is it going to go to a GPR? And then we can manage those customers' expectations. We can ensure we get stuff through, first time, because there's nothing worse for a customer in the experience that we put a policy in, and it goes to a GPR. It takes 3 months to come back because NHS doctors are overworked as well. Everyone, so it comes back, and guess what? It's declined, and then we have to start the whole process again. So it's about ensuring not just that we get it at the top end of that funnel, but we get it out the bottom end, and the customer has the right cover in place for when they need it, which is probably exchange, might be before.
And like you say, if you start at the beginning, you've washed out most of that whilst you're in the mortgage process anyway, haven't you?
100%, 100%. So, and just pulling other levers, working on our conveyancing partners, we use the moving portal for service and have great transit. So it's about building that case value and really looking after the customer needs and the customer outcomes, I would say, and that's really driven it forward. And so there was a very big bump in the road. We actually couldn't, as a business, do mortgages for about 3-4 weeks, which doesn't sound great.
No, it's a killer when there's lots of people sat there waiting to do it.
You got 40 employed people, and actually you put the money to one side, which is sort of 6 figures of lost or deferred income. You put that to one side. You say actually, so we had a couple of issues. One is as an employee, you're frustrated. I did have colleagues crying, and I understood why they were crying. Then you've got customers who are coming to you, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm ready to do my mortgage. Great, my offer's been accepted." They're super excited, and you're going, "Well, I can't do your mortgage today, and I might be able to do it tomorrow, but I might not even be able to do it a day after that." And customers, understandably, are like, "Well,
I'll go somewhere else."
And
the knock-on effect of that is quite big, isn't it? When you look at the lifetime value of a client that you potentially lose, but
and you have to remember these people are real people. That's the most important. It's easy when you're especially like a firm like ours where we'll deal with inquiries 50, 100, maybe some more a day. Those numbers, that's 100 real people every day.
And it's an emotional sale as well, right? These people are emotionally involved in it. It's not like a commercial deal.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's their biggest transaction. A lot of our customers, we have some complex customers, adverse, self-employed, limited company directors. There'll be a lot of brokers and business owners that are watching this going, "Yeah, I know that story," because actually vanilla is you'll find most of the businesses that fail or struggle are the ones that try and chase vanilla.
I just don't think there's that much vanilla business out there anymore. Everything's pretty complex. I don't think it'd be great if there was everyone had 2 normal incomes and it could go straight to Santander at 50% loan to value. But
I also think it's about carving out your niches. We've got a brand called Police Mortgages, and it works for me because I used to be in the police, and we've dealt with a number of federations who are like the unions for years. We've scaled out fairly significantly. We've gone from tens of leads a month 2 years ago, because it wasn't a core focus of ours, to we'll probably in the coming few months exceed 1,000 leads a month. But it costs. It's about the partnership we reinvest.
I was going to say that about the partnership side of things, because some people just try and carve out a niche, but it takes a bit of a thought process, right? It takes you've got to understand the business as well, I think, as well as, obviously you've got that background with the police that...
Yeah, I think you look at someone like Sat Singh, who was the founder originally of CMME, and really good. He was at the right time with our contractors when they were really struggling, and he saw that niche, he carved it out. He was able also to create products with lenders that were unique to him initially. And so and it's about knowing, I did the police because I knew the police. We have a brand called Airline Mortgage Shop. That's because Nicola, who essentially is our principal, who runs the business, she's expert showing. We understand challenges, we understand their pain points, and so it's. I think the worst thing you can do, and I've done this before, is look at someone's business and go, I can copy that, because actually you don't know the nuances.
Yeah. Everyone tries, don't they? It does make sense. If you look at it and think, oh, that's successful, well, they copy that. But there's a thing in the background they haven't looked at.
Yeah, that's how people enter the mortgage industry in the first place. They go, oh, well, I could do a mortgage.
I could do my mortgage.
How many people have started mortgage businesses who you hear the story and they're like, I did a mortgage and the experience was...
I had a bad experience with a mortgage broker, yeah.
I do it myself. And you go, well, if you succeeded at that, great. And if you drive customer experience, but you don't understand the nuances, you don't understand, the difference between the lenders and the complexity of customers. So, but I do think if it did it again, I'd be looking at niches, real, I once saw a broker who did seafarers, for example, stuff like that where they struggle, and it's just about how do you get in front of them, and it's a bit of, I think about some of the stuff we do. We still print posters and leaflets and flyers and get them out to people, on top of our blended digital marketing and SEO. Most leads come from SEO, PPC, stuff like that. But our best converting leads come off of posters.
They really? Yeah. What, like in a police station type?
Yeah, try and get the posters in there. It's pretty tough. So, you can't just walk in and go, oh, by the way, can I just nip in and say, it's about, what we'll normally do is talk to our customers and say, oh, if you're really happy, Marcus, I know you work in XYZ police station. If you've got a notice board for offers, for officers and staff, can you pick it up there for me? British Airways is an example. We pre-COVID, this never resumed after COVID, but pre-COVID, we used to go once a month and stand right in the front door where 3,000 staff a day would walk through. And we'd just stand with a load of cakes, literally 100 Krispy Kremes, cupcakes. We just hand out cakes and go, oh, do you have a mortgage? And that's it. And there's new ways to do that. We use an app from Lead Gen Property Circle, Mark Randall and his team, and Sarah, and actually what we do is on one of our niches we sell £250 voucher, Amazon voucher, if you put your mortgage details in.
Oh, nice.
And one group, one segment of customers, we can get 300 bits of renewal data. And that's the type of thing. It's just thinking outside the box, really.
Yeah. I was going to say about thinking outside the box, and I wanted to kind of lean on this side of things because for me, you're a marketeer, right? I think that's safe to say. That's your passion. You love marketing, and I think the biggest thing people struggle with when it comes to growth. I mean, yes, recruitment is tough, finding the right people is tough, but actually feeding people. I had this conversation, fun enough, with the CEO of L&C earlier on. It's a big business. There's 450 advisors. It is on their mind all the time. And they've got a chief marketing officer, but you are, I would consider one of the best marketeers when it comes to thinking outside the box of how I can keep feeding my team. I mean, how does that come about, for one? Is that a natural passion, and also how much do people have to think about it as a part of their business?
No, well, it needs to be, my dad lost everything in the late 80s, early 90s, and he passed away a couple of years ago, and he said to me, what you have that I didn't have was the skill of marketing. And any business, because as you know, Marcus, I don't just own a mortgage business, I own an estate agency.
Lovely restaurant up the road.
Yeah. So, and all of them, I'm lucky, I think, are, by my, the way that I measure it, pretty successful. And they're all exactly the same. And when I worked in Dubai, I ran the biggest mortgage business in the Middle East. I used to sit on an incubation hub for technology products. And there are two challenges you have with any technology product, but with any business, okay? Number one is the product, and number two is customers finding you. Yeah. And that's what you think about. And so, marketing definitely is something that I've learned along the way. I sort of think of this business as my university degree. And, I watch lots of YouTube. I'm lucky enough to get to travel a bit. I went out twice last year to a place called Chiang Mai in Thailand, where all the digital nomads live. Not all of them, by the way. Some of them,
others wouldn't be nomads.
I see straight over there. But really clever guys who do marketing for doctors in the US and lawyers in the US, and you talk to them, oh, what are you doing? How are you marketing this? And it's just, you always have to be ahead of the curve, because when I started, and this is a bit of an example of what ends up happening. Yeah. It reminds me of a saying when I was a stockbroker. My boss said to me, when the postman tries to give you advice on the stock market, we're really screwed. And that's similar with marketing. If everyone knows about it, you're too late. You're way from the party. And so it's just about Facebook. We had Facebook 2014. We could generate a lead so cheaply on Facebook, for 20p, 40p, something like it was literally so cheap. because I could demographically target on their job, their employer, mortgage credit, and it wasn't a specialist category then. And actually, my challenge was I could fire leads in all day long. Quality was poor because I was getting calculated.
Yeah.
And I was overloading the team, and actually we didn't have a process to manage that. So now we have a process, and we have an onboarding team, and
Is it still the same fundamental though? It's still about putting it all in the top of the funnel?
Yeah, but my first boss, my first boss ever said to me, he said, this business is a sausage machine. The more you put in the top, the more you get at the bottom, and that is so true.
Yeah. But it speaks to the processes in between the top and the bottom, isn't it? To kind of...
You can tweak it, but if you're sat there twiddling your thumbs with no money, not knowing how to do, that is the most, and I've been there.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing that drives it forward. But you talk about, CEO of L&C and all big businesses, what you've got to think with marketing however, whether you're one person or whether you're 1,000 people, is it's got to be a blend. Okay, it's got to be a blend. And I'll give you an example. 3 weeks ago, we were hit on our website very briefly when Google runs out an algorithm update. What you'll find
ruins everyone for 5 minutes.
It's a bit choppy. People go up, people go down. Thank God we have a really, really competent guy who works in the house who we've always been on the right side of the updates, but a lot of big businesses that you will know haven't. Mm-hmm. And for about 2 weeks, our lead volumes went down by 50% as AI were pushing, Google were pushing their new AI overview.
Yeah.
Which was there, and and what that meant was that it was pushing. Although our rankings stayed the same,
still down.
We were visible. And what happened was the people underneath us, some of the bigger businesses, because we probably punch above our weight, to be honest. Some of the bigger businesses were then using PPC to try and get right to the top, pushing up the cost to acquire customers. And so that's why PPC is a really good thing to blend in the business, but it is not what you want as your main lead source, because it's like the crack cocaine of marketing. Okay?
Yeah, another pound in.
You get hooked on it, and then guess what? You can't get off of it. You're absolutely done. And that price volatility, so it's about having a real good, I guess, the secret to, at least for us, is just having a real nice blend of marketing. Also making sure that you do, I watched and I used to listen to stuff and I speak to brokers, doing the basics, because existing customers convert so much higher. Yeah. So much higher.
Do you think we have got this element of, we are driven by new business? We talk about this in the office. We probably have enough business if we really focus on our customers to do well for the next God knows how many years. But we are driven by new business targets as well, like as a business, as a company. But it's not really.
It's levers that you can pull, okay? Because if I think about like protection, for example, at times in our journey we haven't been great at protection. So actually, last year we just got a protection advisor, and he goes through and just speaks to our customers and says, and he's pretty honest. He's like, look, when we spoke to you, we're quite busy, didn't cover it as well as we want to. However, have you got cover? Would you like to talk about cover? And actually, our job is not a sales job. It is, but it's a numbers game. Okay, because it's catching the customer at the right, and you can be more effective at that with marketing. So a little bit like if you think about the restaurant I have in Southampton, we have an automation where we'll email the customer 2 weeks before their birthday. It's happy birthday, come and have a free drink on us, what you plan to, let us make it special. That's a little bit like renewals with mortgages. If we're 6-7 months out going, hey Mr. Smith, we have one dedicated person in our business who just works on renewals, books them up, follows them up, and also oversees our CRM system.
Yeah.
Because everything's integrated. So our calls, our WhatsApp. So also it's about improving conversions. A real life thing for us is for years we've always sent like SMS messages to people. Now you and I have never SMS.
We have a SMS product.
You're thinking I'm dead. Like that's Did
you change your WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Has it made a massive difference?
A huge difference, massive difference, because actually people reply, people talk to you.
Well, all I know is that only people that text me are businesses.
Yeah, or 2FAs, two-factor authentications, or the bank. Yes. So SMS is an absolute. Unless the people are really at a high.
I mean, we've got it. We've got it as part of our automation, right? So if someone hasn't answered us, they go into our automation. That's email, text. We don't actually add WhatsApp to it. We WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
But we WhatsApp. What's the word? Manually. But it's so slow. You're right. You're like that's. I'm writing it down.
We use a system, and if anyone's looking at it, it's called Timelines. It works very effectively. You can set the teams up. Very, very good. Integrates into our CRM system. So we have a closed CRM system where we have, WhatsApp integrated. We have a system, a VoIP system, okay, which not only gives us a scorecard of the call, so we can say what's been covered off.
Yeah.
We can see the sentiment of the call, so it's either positive, negative, or neutral. Yeah. So we can see if the customers are unhappy about stuff. Oh,
there you go.
I thought you had to take the bill then. And then we have then everyone's emails integrated. So what it means is that whoever picks up the case can see it. We have this CRM manager we call externally a customer success manager. But yeah, it is just about those existing customers. A really good way to market. We try and target them on loads of different cross sales and stuff that they might need. And it is getting that balance right, because you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to bombard people with the same. It's the same for us, right? People need us when they need us, but they have to be aware of us when they don't. It's that gentle touch points without just someone wanting to unsubscribe, because that's a killer.
And it's also, about knowing, especially in our business, it's about knowing. So how many people go, oh, I've done the mortgage review, I didn't realise you guys did the insurances, I didn't realise that I could do my, how many customers pay a fee to a broker, and, in our business, for example, we don't charge our existing customers the product transfer.
Yeah.
That's a challenge that we find that we can't overcome very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as long as you have, the whole pie, it still works out.
Yeah. And again, it's the lifetime value of the client, right?
Yeah.
They're not product transferring forever.
They're going to pay you a fee again.
Yeah.
So then they're like, well, I'm not going to them, I'll just click the thing on my app. So it's about educating. You have to educate your advisors and have those conversations and always be banging the same drums, really.
Yeah.
And then and educating your customers and having those conversations and making sure you empower the advisors to have those good quality conversations again.
And obviously all these things, they sound amazing, and you've built the business over years and years, but it doesn't happen overnight, does it? Like, especially with the customer journey stuff, you've constantly got to be not reinventing yourself, but just re-looking at the business all the time.
So my advice to anyone out there is to just try to do one thing a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing a week. If you try and put a system or process in once a week, can be big or small, we use a system called Slack now instead of WhatsApp with our team communications, and the stuff that we build out in Slack, we now do all the onboarding of staff in there, all of the customer reviews go into channels, like all of these things, which drive, if it's in your site, you're driving it forward.
Yeah.
It's just about, if you could do one a week and say half of those stick, for example.
Yeah. You've got 26 a year.
Yeah, good maths there. I'm glad you helped me out there. I was really,
saw your brain ticking.
You've got 26 good processes, then you do it for 10 years. You've got 260 quality processes that really drive your business forward. And I guess the main thing is, especially when you're a busy business owner, whether you're an advisor, you're advising yourself and you're doing all the bits, or whether you're sat at the top, it's really about just continuing to work on that business, because actually most people don't.
Yeah.
I would say 80% of people, definitely in our industry, but maybe 80% of people that will watch this won't do anything. And so if you're doing something, you're already beaten.
I can completely understand with those people as well. We can all be busy idiots, right? We can all just be working. And also, I think you are selective about selling mortgages, but I'm still a fee earner as well, as a small business owner.
Yeah.
So I always say this actually, because I work 12 hours a day on someone else's business, and I probably do half an hour down my own, and then I wonder why theirs is doing really well. But I think it's very hard to pull yourself away from the day-to-day, and I've still got to make money at the end of the day. I've still got to keep the lights on. Ironically, they went off, and
yeah, for sure. And it's also what you enjoy, and that's and so it's about knowing. I guess
how do you find those bits actually? Because you obviously love marketing, right? That's your passion, so you find that a bit easy. What do you do about the bits that you don't love as much?
Well, honestly, like having systems and processes, the best thing about any system and processes is ensuring that I'm not in it.
Yeah.
Because I'm the inconsistent one. So it's about setting up, and you need checks and balances to make sure that those systems and processes still work.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I don't get involved in too much. So if you're talking about me personally now, I don't do emails myself. I have 3 full-time assistants that sit behind me. Mm-hmm. One does my email and diary management. One does all the data, all of the slightly lower end stuff that needs doing, and then my main assistant then will do everything else. So and that means that, and that took me from, if I'm honest, I was at a point where I was unable to keep running.
You get to that, don't you? You get to capacity, right? And you can't do any more.
4,000 emails a day. A lot of them were just like advisors who had left have been forwarding into me and stuff. But emails a day. I was getting 3,500 WhatsApps a day. And it was just too much. Like, just staying at that pace was hard enough.
Yeah, just to look at stuff, it feels like your whole day.
Whereas now I do 10 emails a day, say maybe 15. I wake up. It takes time. Again, like people say, how do you train an assistant to do the stuff you want them to do? Well, there's a great. I guess this is a message for anyone. If you're training teams, and especially remotely or at Loom, which you'll have heard of, LOOM. The screen recording software. Actually all you do is when you train an assistant, you record one task, record it on Loom, send it to them, let them do that. Don't try and tell them your whole life of work in a week. And
our ops manager uses Loom. It drives up the wall that none of us ever watch them.
Yeah.
Like, then you don't know what you're doing.
No, but Loom's so great because actually whether you're a really competent person who can remember in one time you're IT savvy, or whether you're like it takes you a long time to watch. You can watch it 30 times. But it's there and it's there. And so
it's unfortunate it lets you know how many times you've watched it, so you always knows I've never watched them.
Right. I know. Thankfully, I do. Yeah. That's a very valid point. I might go and have a little look. And we use Loom videos for new onboarders because most of our advisors are employed. Most of them work from home. And we have great software to be able to track them and know the outcomes and stuff.
Well, let's touch on that actually, because you've covered every model, right? Over the years, you've had everyone in one office. You've gone hybrid. I know most of yours now is working from home. How do you find the management or the motivation side of things for the working from home team? I mean, there's pros and cons, right? But what do you think?
First of all, I would be totally honest and say we're still finding our feet in some ways. Okay. We do occasionally lose team members who want to be in an office, or we have a very thin management structure. You have Nicola who leads the business. I do like the business development, marketing side of it. We have Jack and Stevens, but that's about it for a business size. And what the type of people we recruit are people who are relatively independent. They normally come from corporate, Connell's Countrywide. We're not looking for them to say, I come with a load of clients, because we're not that fussed. We sell customers out to other mortgage brokers. We're that busy. We sell leads. But how do we do it? If we just accept that, like, I'm not saying that we're perfect for sure.
Let's assume that some people are always going to fall by the wayside with this model.
And people's lives change. People have different needs.
To be fair, people fall by the wayside when you've got them in an office. It's not like working from home. Sure. And I always slate working from home. However, there are businesses that do really well out of it.
The number one benefit, is it opens your pool of talent. Okay, because you and I, Marcus, actually by chance were friends before.
We've lived for years.
Right? We used to go to the pub together, and it's just it's been great to see your career, by the way, excel, and you become like a thought leader in the industry. So well done and congratulations. I guess. But the journey that we've been on is that we would try and recruit advisors in Southampton, and recruiting a good advisor is you really have to, and this more than I do, but you have to be at the right place at the right time. Because
a bit of luck.
And you're earning really good money and you love your job, your head's not going to be turned.
No.
It just doesn't get. You're not going to leave the pipeline. It's making yourself luckier. The law of average is trying to pick up someone in that small pool of talent at the right time at the right place. It is a challenge, and so we're really lucky that we can recruit people. We've got colleagues over in Wales, we've got people up in Yorkshire, we've got people over in Essex. I'm down in Southampton, as south as you can go, and everyone in between. And so we recruit them in, we give them the tools that they need to, we make sure that they're either currently or comfortable at working from home. We try and encourage a bit of a community, like with Slack, in that, we have different channels, we communicate, we share best practices, we share trouble cases, we do team meetings. From a control point of view, we have a bit of software on the computer, so we can see when people are logged in, it takes screenshots, we know everything. So from, perform, and that's really a little bit like CCTV, if I'm honest, Marcus.
I'm not keen on that.
No. Well, what I mean by that is, again, if we go to the restaurant that I own, I have CCTV there.
Yep.
And I have it on my phone. Have I ever watched it on my phone? Honestly, no. I've had to go in a couple of times to download the CCTV where we've had a break-in or whatever. It's exactly the same with this software. It's not there for us to sit
letting you know we're there.
And it's also, because actually as a sales manager, it's pretty simple. I don't really mind if people have to, in this world, you have to be flexible with your colleagues, okay? Because you need them to be flexible, because when it goes wrong and they have to put an extra half an hour in or whatever, you can't just be like, oh, well, they go, I want to pick my kids up from school. And you go, well,
No.
tough shit.
Yeah.
You can't be like that. And you want to support people. Actually, like, I understand, and I understood very early on that, colleagues aren't necessarily your friends, although you're friendly, but you do want people to be happy, and I do think...
Well, happy people are productive people, right?
Yeah,
well, that's the main crux of it.
Yeah, if they have a tough time or something's not going right, I do feel personally for them. So, by having that flexibility with them, and making sure that they have the flexibility, but also saying, look, this is your target. We are a commercial business. This is the outcome that we want, and this is where we want it to be, and how do we get there together? And I hope that the advisors that I manage and I speak to would say to you, look, actually, Chris and I are a team. If I'm not having,
you have to decide to run a grown-up environment as well, right? Like, you've got to work from home. Working from home, the drive of people that work from home is incredible if they can carry on doing it, day in, day out.
100%, and I think it starts right at that recruitment journey, and you'll know this more than anyone. Laying the cards out on the table. So in the recruitment journey, one of the interviews is with me, and you know what? I hit people straight between the eyes. I say, by the way, the first 3 months is going to be hell. Because you're building a new pipeline. You learn loads. If you come in from a employer that has a limited panel, for example, you've got loads more to learn, a whole new system. It's going to be tough, and you're going to find it tough. And the reason why I tell them that at that interview stage is, if and when it is tough, I could go, Marcus,
I did say,
remember
one of the reasons why people leave in the first 6 months is because of lies in the interview process. That's one of the main reasons, because people go, this is a great place, you'll come in, we'll give you X, Y, Z, and they get there and go, that's not what you told me at all. It's so important, because how much the cost of retention, the cost of recruitment is so high that it doesn't make sense to bullshit people at the beginning.
Our biggest challenge, if I think about our biggest challenge in the recruitment process and the retention, because actually I think, we do exit interviews with everyone with an external company, and we have an external HR business, because we want to have good outcomes and people to be happy. We as a business, I think we would accept we're not perfect, but we strive to be perfect. And I guess one of the biggest challenges where people's heads get turned is the length of the time it is to really build sustainable commission. It's the truth, because we have
I think sorry to jump in, I also think that works for business owners as well. They have unrealistic aspects of when I start making money from this person. Like, you're not going to make money. I say to people, if someone comes into our business, for the first 12 months, you're realistically not going to be making any money from them. They might be covering their money by the end, but you're not going to make, at least you're comfortable with it. If you're looking at people in 2 or 3 months going, well, you're not making any money, like, you're going to have that constant revolving door problem.
It's impossible, and you've got to have that view, and you've got to get them in a position, and that's probably one of our learning curves more recently, because they start. We've had some great advisors who've started and hit like 15-20 grand in the first month. But even that probably doesn't see their pay packet for 7 months. It really, it takes 6 months to go through, a month for it to get paid. It just takes time, and that's the starting stuff. If you start slow and it takes you 3 months, you're in 10 months. So, and especially for people and advisors, and it is a challenge for both the advisors and the business principals, where it's like, okay, well, how do you keep people motivated who are doing incredible figures, who are doing incredible money, and they look at it and they go, oh, I'm earning, I'm putting in, an example is most of our advisors will write 20-25 grand a month, and they're going, I'm making the business loads of money, and I'm not seeing any of it, and you're like, well, we're not
getting any yet. Yeah, we get it, you get it, and we get it.
But once they get past that stage,
that's,
and you'll see it as well. I saw an ex-colleague of ours from a couple of years ago, and he's literally every 6 months just hopping around with the guarantees. But it's so detrimental for long.
There's only so long you can do that.
Yeah, people know they're not. You might get away with it with some corporate companies who've got targets to recruit, but good quality businesses. And what we find is most of our colleagues are over 5 years with us, and it's if I can get them through that stage and get where they need to be.
I honestly think that's the same as most businesses. If you get through the first 12 months, you kind of got them. You know what I mean? They're either really short tenure or really long tenure. You don't tend to get the middle ground people, because it's, again, you're happy, you keep them fed with leads, and they don't need to be out and they've got a good pipeline, you know, so it's not like,
Yeah.
but you're right, it is that struggle. And I actually, what I take from this as well is that transparency at the beginning to go, it is tough. Although we actually, on the nature of our business, I really struggle with the next generation because I need someone to take over from me, for instance, on business development. And you've got to say to someone like, you've got to work your arse off for 4 or 5 years and then you will get paid during that time, but it will get easier. And when you try and explain that to a 21-year-old, they've got to wait 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. And you know, as I say, like especially, you know, the challenge, I guess, the one downside to employed model compared to self-employed is that, you know, people get their head turned for like a couple of grand.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah.
So short-sighted. And
you lose a pipeline to make 4 grand more on a salary is
or like you lose a member of staff and they're like, oh, you know, I had one not that long ago, and they're like, oh well, you know, there's 15 advisors in the business already, but none of those are management experience. But they have said I could be the next manager.
They'll be gone in 6 months because there's no one we manage.
Like, if I was you, I'd be thinking, how dare you talk about colleagues like that? And you know, and they're telling you, oh well, by the way, you're the big one. Be. It's just like, you know, and there's a couple of big firms at the moment who will pay. You know, it's the same thing that goes around. People pay bigger basics, promise the world, try and create this like narrative. And then they scale it back because it doesn't work because the margins aren't there. You know, and so, you know, I think the only person that I really can think about who really smashes it is Ying Tang, who we know, who does very good. Ying Tang does a very good job at like going in and running it like a business owner, but creating some
Ying is a very good accountant.
Yeah. I bet the figures and the dreams, and so like I think he does a great job. But I think a lot of the other sort of fintech, and I might be doing a disservice because I don't know loads of them. So, but
no, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of them that don't make, and much the same as with they didn't really before Ying joined either. By the way, you know, there was always that struggle. I always laugh at. I tell you what, I do have a bit of a bugbear because a guy came to me. I think it's a guy I don't trust, or maybe can't remember. But it was maybe 6-7 years ago, saying you will be out of a job because there'll be no need for brokers. And then what they realise is to make the fintech robo advice work is 50 brokers in a room to make it work. Which ironically is what fucking mortgage brokerage is anyway.
Well, I had this. I remember robo advice was the big term.
Oh, we're all out of a job,
But I was telling people in 2011 that I was like, in 10 years' time, I won't have a job, you know. But economics means that you'll be redeployed somewhere else in the economy. And actually, by 2021, and it has moved a little bit now, but by 2021, the market hadn't changed at all. Nothing had changed.
I think it's because it's an emotional sale as well, and I don't think your computer, your AI stuff, I don't think it picks up on it.
The next generation may want to buy like that. They don't like talking on the phone. You know, they're really super comfortable with technology and buying via technology, and so that may consumer adaptation of like the technology might.
I think you can streamline the process. You can make it easier with adopting AI and robo advice if you like. But I do think the sale point where you're like, is this a good idea? You know what I mean?
Well, but also the main challenge is people are still complex. You know how we're moving with HMRC being digital and it continues to move forward. But actually, you know, from lenders' points of view, if I think about the complicated lenders who might work off accountant projections, technology just can't do that type of stuff. Again, with complexity of property types, and there's some great property data coming out of, you know, some of the portals and stuff, and I've got some friends that sell them into surveyors. But you know, it's still a complicated product, and you have to remember, businesses, whether they're a lender, you know, whether they're an insurer, they still need to make money as well, and technology is pretty expensive. And how many white elephants, have we had where someone says, I'm going to build this system? My God, the amount of people and
it's going to work. They're
like, we're going to build the best system you've ever seen, and they roll it out, and it's just because everything moves so quickly.
Well, I was going to say, it's not that these systems are bad; they're just obsolete by the time they come out.
Well,
it's the 8.0 version of it that actually really works.
We use our CRM system that we use is an off-the-shelf system that we customise. Because actually, and one of my friends has a really, really good Salesforce system. Super jealous of having it, but you know, it's $100,000 system. You know, so $100,000 system, and it's expensive to run, and so you've got to balance it. You know, our CRM system for all of our users is probably somewhere in the region of £1,500 a month.
Yeah.
You know,
really,
and we adapt.
Way less than mine. I've got 8 people. The thing is, we've adopted loads of automation and stuff into us. So we've got constantly adding
I
onto
remember
it.
you used to use a system called Bulldog. Is that
Bullhorn?
right? Am I making
Yeah,
that
no,
up?
we still use Bullhorn. We just have a new. That's smart. Yeah, but it's moved on a lot when it comes to automation and AI and all the stuff that's helping. It's basically taking away all our admin. You know, much the same.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in a estate agency we use a system called Street that's very similar, and it blends into a system called Spectre, which is the prospecting tool. And it's crazy. It uses AI to dictate and work out when the propensity of someone likely to move, and it actually works. And you're
it's
like,
nuts, isn't it?
Do you know? They know that they're going to move out. So yeah, no.
Let's talk about that actually, Chris. So you've recently just bought into, is that right, or you taken on the side of things? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so there's a.
I saw your face, by the way, on a post near my house.
I know, it's like in Southampton, it's a hostile takeover. I get a WhatsApp every day. The Nested is a business that is a lot like a lot of these self-employed agency models.
Yeah.
I looked at them all. I think that it's the best.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm going to say that. But run by a lady called Alice, and the
Smart
team behind her are amazing. Yeah, and they do. What they do is they give you the tools to. They take a proportion of your income, but they give you everything that you need. Right. And actually, it works out commercially a very clever way of doing it. And so, the challenge for me, the one thing that was maybe a bit different with Nested, that's worked really in my favour, but I didn't love initially, was that their for sale boards have your face on them.
Yeah.
And so I don't.
You love that, Chris. Don't come on, mate.
Oh, honestly, I got billboards all over the. Honestly, but it's what it has done is, and it made me realise the value of personal brands where we live, because actually, the whole circle works very well. And so I had a chat.
And it connects to other businesses as well. Right? Like you say, you've got a good personal brand. You've built it up.
Well, I get more people calling me about mortgages just from seeing my face on estate agency boards, and then it's closing all of those gaps. So I saw that last February. Then a chap who I've worked with for the last 15 years said to me, "Look, I want to get back into actual estate agency." He was an estate agent before, so I said, "Look, let's do it together." And I took the Nested franchise. It is essentially a franchise. They probably wouldn't call it that.
Yeah.
To Southampton. And honestly, I thought to myself, if I could just do one sale a month, that would be a good place to be. The first 3 months. So we just closed the first 3 months. We did just under 60 valuations, 30 instructions, and I think we did 10, 11 sales. So very good from a cold start with no brand.
And everywhere people need a mortgage.
Well, a good example of how, and you talk on paper, and I can sit here and tell you how things work. But actually, the first sale we did was to the guy. We were doing his mortgage. We got the sale off the back of it. We then got his forward purchase. The guy buying from him didn't use us. However, the broker that was placing the case, it was a flat with the service charge over 1%, was placing it for the lender who would have declined it. So we were then able to talk to that broker and say, this isn't going to work with that lender. This is who you need to
speak to them,
together, which would have been the challenge. And then off the back of it, we then got about 5 referrals in that block that were on the market. And we also got his girlfriend's place, which we sold. So actually, it shows you this one mortgage customer who's probably worth £1,500, £2,000, turns into sort of £25,000 of revenue. And so it does actually work. But it's about having really good people, really good processes. The Nested brand is a great brand to have behind you, and the technology they use, like Street, like Spectre, all of that's included in what comes off. So. And it drives forward. It is, I had another friend of mine who came to me a couple of weeks ago and he's like, "Look, we're looking to move house." And I was like, "Okay, well, why don't we sell the house?" And that's just, driving income, driving you. And it's worked really well.
It's a natural progression for where you are in a business. It's not like, although you have got some businesses that are way out, like the restaurant and stuff, which is outside of your initial skill set. These make sense, right? They're all part.
But the restaurant works as well. The restaurant is, to put it into context, I think that did nearly like 2 million of net turnover last year. It's a big restaurant.
Yeah.
It's it's
great grub.
Yesterday was a busy Sunday, over 300 people. But what we do is when you're a vendor who lists with us and puts your property on the market, you get a video from me because I don't do much of the work. If I'm being honest with you, I'm the marketing top end of the funnel.
You're the face on the billboard.
Yeah, I know, poor Southampton. But you get a voucher as well that says, Marcus, congratulations on listing your property with us. To celebrate, go and have some cocktails or some food at our restaurant.
Oh, nice.
And there's, if you actually think about that, that's quite clever because you create goodwill in the estate, which helps you with any other further recommendations or referrals. You also bring a new customer potentially into one of your other businesses.
Smart
Who
thinking.
then you can monetize, and it just sort of, that works really, really well. And again, with like our key stakeholders, we have some really good stakeholders. I'm able to go out and say, oh, like, look, because actually, whereas bigger businesses are going out and trying to offer 25, 30, 40% back-end commission on this deal or front-end commission on this deal, I can, mine's about relationships. Like, oh, take your wife down on Saturday night to figure out to enjoy it. And that actually, that £100, £200 meal's worth way more than paying them £2.5 because they don't.
And it means more to people as well, doesn't it? Cash is cash, but that's actually, we actually found that with incentives, that we give £250 referral fee for any successful people, but if we give away something tangible like a meal out or a nice hat, we send someone a nice hamper, it goes so much further. Or someone's had a shit time and we'll send them a bottle of champagne and some flowers, or whatever. It's such a massive difference in the way people like emotionally attach themselves.
And that's the way, and when you think about marketing, when we do stuff, we've done stuff before where we're like, oh, like and share our page, back when Facebook was a big thing. And a big thing for us, I mean. And we would offer an iPad, okay? The examples of police, okay? We'd be like and share the page to get an iPad. No one would engage. We'd be like and share the page to get a box with like some mugs, some teaspoons, some coffee, some biscuits for your shift. And we'd have like 400 people like share the page.
That's nuts, isn't it?
You're like, what's going on? And it is about, one, it's about trust. Two, it's about thinking outside the box and knowing what people want.
Yeah.
So.
But it's someone who's emotionally attached to something, whereas no one emotionally attached to cash.
And I'm not super creative, so the secret there is having either a creative partner or creative friends around you.
Are you not? I've always considered you a creative. When we talk about ideas, is that not your bag?
I think I'm a pretty good builder of businesses in that I can see how to make money. But I have one of my friends actually who owns where we live in the city, Orange Room, which is probably the longest standing bar and club. The guy's a frigging genius, and I'll say to him, I need a name for this, and he'll just roll it off and he creates festivals. He runs Oktoberfest. He runs country music festival. He does everything. But he comes up with ideas like you wouldn't believe. And so again, it's just being surrounded by I guess that goes back to what people say, don't they? Surround yourself with people who are like-minded. And and I think you and I have both been on a journey in our careers, haven't we? And so and I've had to sort of reposition maybe what I do socially. Try to drink less and stuff, and that means that
we've all been through that journey, mate. That's just all getting old. Repositioning yourself socially is a lovely way of saying it.
Not being in the same pub every night or going.
It doesn't help for creativity either, does it? That kind of.
No, and I don't do a lot of the mortgage events. If you see me at a mortgage event, it's only because strategically the person who's invited me, I want to work closely. Well,
we were supposed to be meeting one recently. I'm not going to start, casting aspersions on. There's an empty seat next to me. I'm going to let it drop it.
I don't know what that. I'm just going no comment. And when I was in the police, we would go no comment.
No comment. Good job. So, what do you think? I've kept you for long enough. But what are your plans for the mortgage hut, and what's your vision of the market over the next couple of years? How do you see things planning out?
Well, I would say first of all with the market, I think what we have seen definitely in my 14 years is there's volatility. There's always a story about Trump's the one at the moment. I'm sure there's going to be another Ukraine, war in Europe, whatever it may be. The bottom line is that people still move, people still do stuff, and you've just got to know where your market is. And maybe you'll have to work harder for leads, maybe you won't. But we talked about like levers that you can pull.
Yep.
So if you're busy with mortgages, but it gets quiet, make sure that you're pulling all those levers. So our vision is just to continue building. Sustainably, with the good team members that we have, supporting them, trying to drive productivity forward is the main one. We've gone from, I think an average network advisor does like 9 grand, 8-9 grand of income a month. As I said to you earlier, like we're fairly consistently now at 20. And I'd like to get our advisors forward.
And that is the magic as well. As much as I want everyone to recruit, right? You've got to make the most of the people you've got in your business, right?
Well, but the money that you generate off of that creates your opportunity, because if you have money, marketing and driving lead volumes is super easy.
Everything's
if you have no money, it's really difficult. And so, it's about having, especially with employed advisors, your fixed overheads are generally at the high, I guess if you can.
It's relative, isn't it? Especially starting out. I think we always have this self-employed thing that we talk to people about, and I think people think that employed is less or more of a risk, which is wrong. because self-employed they're
No.
giving such a big chunk away that
It's just a longer
to
vision
maintain
than
that.
you-
Yeah, exactly. That short-term angst of like, I have to pay people.
Yeah, it's just like there's challenges with both,
Yeah.
and there's different mentalities with both. But it's about probably that extra 10-20% written at the top end is probably an additional 90%
Yeah.
profit.
That's a massive cut,
It's
yeah.
about tweaking those, and so it's just continuing to grow, continuing to look at where we get our lead sources from and where we get our customers from. The world's changing. We've used SEO for a very long time. We're now starting to convert really well with customers straight off the chat GPT. So, but you've always got to be thinking, what's the next thing around the corner?
Nice. Great. That's a lovely way to finish it as well. Thank you, mate. And if anyone wants to get hold of you, Chris, what's the best way of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, drop me, like I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, just hit me up.
Yeah.
Slip into my DMs and say hello.
All of Chris's socials will be on our socials. Thank you everyone for watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify. I genuinely appreciate your time, Chris. It's been really, really insightful, and hopefully people got some good value from it.
No, it's good seeing you.
Thank
for
you,
having
mate.
me.